This is Talk is Sheep, the official podcast of the Wild Sheep Society of BC, brought to you by Sitka Gear. Come along as we bring conversations that matter to you into the high alpine. This episode is sponsored by our conservation partner, Frontiersman Gear. Thank you, Sitka Gear and Frontiersman Gear, for investing in healthy wildlife and sustainable ecosystems.
Good day to our Talk is Sheep listeners. This is a pretty exciting podcast. We've been trying to connect for a long time, but we've got Todd Hisey on the podcast. He is the CEO of the Veteran Hunters, and really excited to talk to you today. So welcome to the podcast, Todd.
Well, thanks for having me. I know we met at the Wild Sheep Foundation dinner in Alberta, and it just was schedules and stuff like that. And no, it's great that we can finally connect. And yeah, I love what the Wild Sheep do. Life member, and I believe if you're a hunter out there and you hunt a species of animal, that you should really be taking out life memberships in these organizations. If you look at it from a dollars and cents standpoint, buying a life membership is cheaper in the long run. So,
yeah, it's a good investment. It sure looks good on the on our books when we go to talk to government and we do engagement and that sort of stuff. We've got X amount of life members, and so 100% well said. We need more Todds in the world, so please take note to our listeners. But anyway, Todd, let's learn a little bit about. Let's just start with you and your background, and then we'll get into the organization and what the great work that you guys are doing. But let's talk a little bit about Todd and your background.
Yeah, no, it's great. I grew up in Fort McMurray, Alberta. I've been fortunate to pretty much live almost my entire life in Alberta, and joined the military when I was 19 years old, and thought that I was actually the first of my family to have served. And then years later, did some research and actually found that we have a unique history of service in my family going back to actually the American Revolution. So my desire to serve in the military was not unique to myself. There's actually some good blood in there. And my family's basically fought and served in almost every major conflict, like I said, since the American Revolution. Served for a total of 22 years. I went through the military college system, so I spent a couple years in BC in Victoria at Royal Roads Military College, when it was then a military college. Beautiful spot in Colwood there. Was a great couple of years there, and then transferred to the Royal Military College in Kingston, where I graduated in 1995, and then was off leading soldiers for like the rest of my career. And I was fortunate, got posted to Calgary initially, and then Edmonton, and spent some time in Wainwright, and then served my entire 22 years, except for about a year and a half I was in Ottawa. Spent about a year and a half there as a weapons inspector, and was really fortunate. Got into, Mother Russia, and got to go count tanks. And that was just at the time when Putin was just coming into the world stage as the Soviet premier, or should I say Russian premier and president. So it was really cool to get over there, and it was a really interesting career. Cross-trained. I was an infantry officer by trade. Was fortunate to train in intelligence, and that's partly how I ended up in a role like as a weapons inspector and getting into places like Russia. And then, if I think back, I've worked with 15 different countries throughout my career, and you learn which soldiers from other countries are really great coffee makers and which ones are really good war fighters. And the warfighter, I'll tell you right now, the warfighter profile in the world is a very small profile. And and there are really some really good countries in that category that can fight well. And I would put the Americans up there. I've served a lot with the United States overseas, and trained a lot with them, and then with the British. I've been fortunate to spend a lot of time working with both those nations overseas on deployments in Bosnia and in Kosovo, and then in Russia. So, so that's my career in like 30 seconds, maybe.
Well, and maybe we should just talk the whole podcast about your career, because that's a podcast plus for the next 20 episodes on its own. But obviously, we won't go down that rabbit hole today. So let's talk a little bit about the transition to you sort of you're the sort of the culmination of your military career, and then your journey into the veteran hunter. So how did you kind of make that transition, and what inspired it? Kind of what led you to that path?
Yeah, so I'll back up a little bit back into kind of the middle part of my military career. So I had what we would refer to in the military as broken service. So I served for 10 years first time, was out for a period of time, and then went back in. And after serving 10 years, and after my tour in Kosovo, I ended up getting out of the military. And unbeknownst to me, the military had diagnosed me with post-traumatic stress, but they hid it from me. They actually blacked out, redacted my medical records, and let me get out of the military because they're like, oh, he just wants out anyhow, so big deal. But there are rules in place for a reason. So one of the rules the military has, where the medical system says that we can't return you back to civilian life until we actually can fix or repair you to the best of our abilities. But they just neglected it and said, here, he goes back. So I went pretty much undiagnosed for almost another decade, including going back into the military. So when I returned back to the military, and now we were gearing up for Afghanistan, and the medical system actually, and some of my peers started wondering, maybe I have post-traumatic stress, and started kind of down that road. And they were like, yeah, no, you have a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress, blah, blah, blah. And then a number of therapists and psychologists started kind of, this has to be linked, because the military always they want to link it to something specific related to your military service, because then the one that actually benefits you as the member. And at least that's the way it's supposed to work. Because if they can tie it to your military service, then that changes how you get released from the military, whether it's a medical or voluntary release, or it also then opens up access to services through Veterans Affairs Canada. And that's kind of how it went for me. But part of it was trying to get that linkage back to, kind of like 2001. I was at Kosovo in 99, but got out in 2001, and was trying to get that link back. And that took about 7 years, working with my member of parliament, Blake Richards, who's now the shadow minister for the Conservative Party, as the shadow minister for Veterans Affairs. And that was a 7-year battle, which actually culminated in, I love how God works. This is amazing. I called into Daniel Smith. She had gone back to doing radio, and she had the new Minister for Veterans Affairs, Little Minister Kent Hare, on. And I called into the show. Her producer talked to me, and I was immediately right on air. And basically, I'm in tears, because at that point, I transitioned from the military to the civilian world, but I hadn't yet been under the care of Veterans Affairs. So there was kind of this gap. And I had gone back to working in oil and gas, and I had just been laid off and had spent a year basically unemployed, burning through like my life savings. And I'm in tears on air. And all Kent Hare can do is say, hey, I'm going to give you my executive assistant's number. We're going to go off air. You're going to call her tomorrow, and we're going to sort this out. And yeah, and within a few months, there was a meeting in Ottawa with all these politicians and generals, and they basically said, right, unredact Captain Hisey's medical records. And they saw in blue ink in the margins, diagnosis of post-traumatic stress in 2001. And they were like, whoa. So immediately, the financial floodgates opened, and I started into formalized treatment. They backdated my medical release, and a lot of great things started happening for me and my family, which was great. And one of those great things was, we were able to go to Africa, and I was able to take some of that money, because I'd gone a number of years undiagnosed, and my kids were now teenagers, so they'd kind of had seen this untreated dad in their home, and that weighs on you as a parent and as a husband. And basically wanted to start a new slate and start creating new memories for my kids. And then part of that was connecting with now a good friend of mine, Rob Birch, Royal Karoo Safaris. They've become really good family friends. We spent 3 weeks touring South Africa, and every one of my kids harvested animals, and most of the animals in this room are actually my kids. But you know what? For me, that was super healing, going to South Africa, spending that time hunting. And then I started wondering about this, bow hunting, and I'm like, why am I feeling so good being outdoors? Why, whether I harvested the animal or not, just the experiences of being outdoors, and I just felt so relaxed. And so in 2018, Veterans Affairs permanently retired me. They said, you know what, we've broken you, that we can't return you back to a civilian workplace as you are, because of the various types of post-traumatic stress. So I could say, like, the triggers that I have. So a lot of my triggers came from my leadership within the military. So, which made me really made problematic for me to actually go and work, say, in an oil and gas sector job, where my boss and I might conflict. But also, I have a really different leadership style than what is preferred in Alberta's oil and gas. I use a servant leader style of leadership, and they're very much more of a laissez-faire or a very autocratic system. And that just doesn't fit with me. So they permanently retired me. And my wife, Patricia, she's been great, because she's been with me through the whole journey. We literally call it a journey. I went through 6 years of treatment, and went to 3 hearings with Veterans Affairs. It's not a slam dunk with Veterans Affairs, even if you have a diagnosis. The system is designed to make you fight for everything that you deserve here, as a wounded soldier. And it's unfortunate. And their system is basically, it's a very abusive system. It's abusive in the language that they purposely choose when they're speaking to veterans, and to the fact that, I know of at least 6 veterans that were offered MAID in the last few years, which is kind of brutal to think of a country wanting to kill not only its own citizens, its own veterans, because it's cheaper. Anyhow, we'll park that one. But so she was like, you got into bow hunting and you found it really therapeutic, and just being in Africa and just seeing how that was just so calming. She's like, now you've got the time. And the doctors all said, hey, you know what, you're still a young guy at the time. Said, why don't you go volunteer your time somewhere, maybe help other veterans, right? Because as an officer, I really had a passion for serving my soldiers. Thus my leadership style is really, as a leader, my job is to serve my soldiers and help them become the best that they can be, and remove any barriers to reaching their maximum potential, or my organization reaching my maximum potential. And so she said, go look for a hunting or fishing organization in Canada that you could work with. And we looked across the country, and there was nothing. There was absolutely nothing for veterans or first responders that offered the therapy that we have. And so we started the Veteran Hunters. She helped come up with the name as well. It's a dual meaning name. One, we take veterans and first responders when we go out hunting. But 2, we're actively hunting for veterans and first responders to get them out of their homes, to get them connected with their brothers and sisters, build a massive peer support network, build a family for them, and get them outdoors. And it's interesting, Conservation Magazine did a whole article about us, and they went and got doctors actually to justify what we were doing, and it's called urgent biophilia. And it's the innate instinct for humans to seek out nature in times of crisis. And we've been doing this now for 6 seasons, and we've put over 400 veterans and first responders. Initially, we just did veterans, but there was a natural transition to first responders, because a lot of responders are veterans, especially in the United States. You'll find probably 75-80% of responders in the U.S. Start out as veterans. And I found the same here, that I was encountering a lot of veterans who were actually working as responders. And then we just said, hey, this is just a natural evolution, as well, to bring the responders into our group, and a lot of what we do overseas, they do on a daily basis here. And actually, I have three children, and both my sons, my eldest son, he's a combat engineer in the Army, and my youngest son is a firefighter. So even in our own family, we have the whole gamut of service.
Awesome. Well, so much stuff there, and there's a bunch of stuff I want to unpack. I want to definitely touch on the veteran hunters and the organization, the program. And I know we're just scratching the surface now,
Sure.
but I just want to go back on the PTSD side, and the podcast is not meant to beat up on veteran affairs and the government, but let's unpack that a little bit. Have you seen an evolution? Are things better? Obviously, what happened to you where your files were redacted is absolutely just incredible and so sad and so horrible. Is that stuff still happening on a wide scale basis today? Has there been an evolution? Has the government sort of got its quote act together and resolved some of these issues and given a bit more support for our veterans, or is it still as bad as it was back in the early days for you?
I would say it's probably worse, unfortunately.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so like governments usually do is what they do is they'll put another layer between themselves and and the person who needs their services. So a few years ago, Veterans Affairs contracted out to this other company and basically duplicated almost its entire organization now, and it's a contracted company. And it's funny, veteran circles, we call this like money laundering in Canada. And in many cases, it's not helping the veterans, but it's helping the doctors, nurses, um, psychiatrists, psychologists that these guys are supposed to be seeing. But there's a lot of this, and this has come through an evolution of a liberal government, unfortunately, where we're seeing a lot of mismanagement of funds. And veterans, in my opinion, veterans are just another gateway to spend money and redirect it to others within this country. Are the veterans receiving the service? In some cases, they are. In some parts of this country, they are. And some of the guys I know who are personally getting great service. But there are other guys, and part of it, unfortunately, depends on the province that you're in. If you're in Alberta, like I am, to be honest, like I was very fortunate. Yes, I had to fight for certain things. Part of that goes with the territory. But I was at a point where I was capable, both mentally and physically, of building arguments, going before judicial, inquiries or panels, and stating my case, and in some cases doing some theatrics. Like I have every piece of correspondence that I've had from Veterans Affairs since I started with them back in, say, 2014. So I have a book that's like huge, and I slam that down when I see the panel. I would put that down on there, right? And they just look at it and go, "Whoa!" So first off, there's that psychology of basically this veteran has been through that much paperwork with Veterans Affairs. And these guys are saying, so I've been 3 times there, and these guys are the final say as to whether or not I get compensated and into treatment for my injuries. Because I have some physical injuries as well as my post-traumatic stress. And then it's a matter of basically answering their questions. And so not every veteran is at a point where he's capable of fighting this massive bureaucracy that really has no interest in helping them. I was fortunate. I had to work briefly. So part of the whole Veterans Affairs determining that they've broken bad enough that you can't work anymore. So I had to go get a job, and I worked for Parks Canada for like 6 weeks. And I was fortunate that the lady I worked for at Parks Canada, she had at one time been a director in Veterans Affairs. And she told me how it actually works. She goes, the vast majority of Veterans Affairs employees are from Prince Edward Island. And they look at you as, I have 20 to 25 years till my pension, and that's how long I have to deal with this issue. And I'm like, but veterans some of them don't have 25 years left potentially to live. And she goes, exactly. And unfortunately, the people in the public service, in some cases, I don't mean to broad brush them. There are probably good people there who have good intentions. But where's the humanity? Like, where's the compassion? This guy, we volunteered to serve, protect our country, protect these people who are now supposed to look after us, right? I remember one colonel, when I was back in the military, I was fortunate to work in headquarters in Edmonton and work with the likes of the then Minister of National Defense, Peter MacKay, and others at a very senior level. So it was very cool from that perspective. And to see some of these senior people talking to senior people in Veterans Affairs saying, hey, let's put an analogy of hockey. So, a hockey player, plays his life, or as long as his body can sustain itself to play, maybe 20 years, maybe less, right? And if he gets injured or when he goes to retire, it's the job of like the NHLPA and the NHL to look after that player. And that's why they pay into all these programs, that kind of stuff, right? And this colonel said to Veterans Affairs, he said, that's what you're supposed to do for the veterans. You're supposed to have their back. You're supposed to look after them when they're done serving, or they're not able to serve anymore because they got shot, they got their legs blown off. And I know guys who've had their legs blown off, and every year they still have to get a doctor to verify that they still don't have legs. That's what we're at in this country. And now we have a point where it's happened in 5 different provinces, where at least six veterans calling up for help, saying, hey, I just need some help. And the person on the end of the phone goes, well, we have this program called MAID. And if you take it, we'll pay your family $300,000. Because it's cheaper. Because they broke us so bad. A lot of us from the former Yugoslavia time, because they put us into situations where we were not allowed to defend ourselves. We weren't allowed to defend villagers. We had to basically just watch whole villages get destroyed and then get told, go in and clean up the bodies. That breaks you morally as a person. And then, and you do that repetitively for years, and your own leadership doesn't support you. So that's another moral injury. And what happens over a period of time is you have tens of thousands of guys. So based on Veterans Affairs' own statistics, in 2017, in 2017, there were 35,000 veterans. And those were guys that had served in the Balkans for the majority, in treatment for post-traumatic stress. So can you imagine now if the government, through their programs, trying to put us through treatment, like I did 6 years of treatment for post-traumatic stress. And then I got a master's degree and a whole bunch of stuff to try and equip me to go back into the workplace. And it didn't work out. Will you imagine if you have 30,000 guys that you can't put back into the workplace because of the scenarios that you put them in the former Yugoslavia? Just do the math, like, on that, right? And it's fortunate. It's unfortunate, but that's the sad reality in Canada now. And based on my own experience with the veteran hunters, we find that it takes about a veteran about 8 years before he's ready to admit he needs help for his post-traumatic stress. So that means there's a lot of guys, the Afghanistan guys now will just start coming into like the treatment window, or have been in the treatment window. So you add the Afghanistan veterans on top of the Balkans veterans, and you have like, probably, like, you could have 100,000, let's say 100,000 men and women who serve this country that aren't capable of working in a traditional role.
Todd, on that note, so let's talk a little bit about if it's 8 years till they recognize they need treatment. So somebody's in combat, or they're deployed overseas, or maybe not even deployed, but PTSD, they suffered PTSD, and then maybe they're they retire from the military, or they leave, or honorably discharged, whatever the case may be. And then 8 years down the road, is there any like, how do they deal with that? Like, do they go, holy crap, I'm in trouble here. I've got this problem. I'm having all these issues. They figure out, maybe get a proper diagnosis that it is PTSD, or recognize there's a problem. Is there any recourse? Is there any opportunity to go back to the military to deal with this? Or is this just people that have basically gotten out because they can't do the job anymore for whatever reason? They're just like, hey, I'm just not there. And then they realize they have PTSD. Is there any opportunity to go back and get any opportunity from the government, any support, or how does that work? Or are they just screwed?
So,
They're just too bad.
well, I could say yes, yes, yes to all three of your questions. So, yeah, in a perfect world, and I've helped a number of guys. That's one of the things we do at the Veteran Hunters is we provide assistance to veterans in navigating through this, because I've been through everything you could possibly think of, aside from MAID, Veterans Affairs has thrown at me. And I believe that God has equipped me through all of that to be in a situation where I can now coach my brothers and sisters and help mentor them through this very trying and frustrating process. So there were opportunities for guys getting out. Now, part of it is you have to be a little bit smart getting out of the military. When I say smart, is that ask for a set of your medical records before you leave the military, because trying to get a copy of your medical records as a civilian through an access to information request from the military could be extremely onerous and time consuming. So if you have those medical records and now you're in the civilian world and you're struggling with jobs, like I went through a number of different jobs in oil and gas. And you start talking to see your civilian doctor, and you're like, hey, and then they're like, you serve military, right? They're like, yeah, okay. So she looked through my military medical records, and in her case, her husband had served in the British military. So I had a really good, smart, astute civilian doctor that I could work with, and so she started. So I would then contact Veterans Affairs, and she started putting through the different applications for my physical injuries. The mental ones were well underway, because that was the whole disclosure package, the Blake Richards and Kent Hare, and then courtesy Daniel Smith's radio show, that they had already started unpacking. And it was the other physical stuff that I started that I had issues with. And partly one of the problems so I'm 53. So in my vintage in the military, it was like, you never went to see a doctor, military doctor. You just rub a little dirt on it to keep going. The joke in my time in the military was the medics would give you like Cepacol. But I got a broken arm. It's okay. Here's a cough candy. Suck on it. The kind of thing, right? And I remember one time I was in training, and I didn't know at the time, but I had torn the Liz Frank ligament in my left foot. So if you go Google this is a season-ending NFL injury. Like, you'll be in a cast for like 8 weeks and you're done for the season if you tear that. My case was like, here's a tensor bandage, a bottle of Tylenol, and off I go. And because I'm on a course. If I get medically released from this course, it pushes my career back and that kind of stuff, right? So then in that case, like, I had to go and find guys that I had served with to get them to swear that they had seen me be injured, that kind of stuff, because it wasn't necessarily on my medical records. So it's a little bit easier if you have your own medical records. You can find guys to write notes to say, yes, I was with him when the injury happened. There's civilian medical support to back it up, and you can tie it to a physical date and time where you got hurt in the military. So that's kind of a simplified version. The more complicated version is you don't have anything, and you realize you've got a problem, and you call Veterans Affairs, and you need it, and then it's like, okay, they either have to request your medical records, you see their doctors, but then you got to tie it back to your military service. And if you're successful in being able to tie that back to your military service, the next step is then to basically write to the Canadian Armed Forces and say, hey, I should have been medically released because I had post-traumatic stress related to this operational tour. and you go through that process. Now, there was a time where they were basically saying, yeah, like they acknowledged they really messed up, that they released thousands of people who should have been released medically for post-traumatic stress. But remember, there's money tied to that. Every time someone's medically released, they get X amount of dollars per month for the rest of their life. And if they're married, their spouse gets half of that. If I pass away, my wife gets half of my military pension. They stopped doing change of release items for guys. They basically said, no, just not doing it anymore. And then, so there are guys I know, your last comment was they're just screwed. Yeah, I have friends who are unfortunately are screwed. I've tried helping them. They've talked to different lawyers. There's a few lawyers in Canada that try and help veterans, provide some pro bono guidance. And if they like your case and if they think it's winnable, they'll take it and they'll sue the government. There's been 3 class action lawsuits, and it's interesting, the government's been found guilty in all 3 of those class action lawsuits. But yet none of us have seen a dime yet from those class action lawsuits. And then lastly, the member, as a veteran is leaving the military, he's supposed to fill out and connect with Veterans Affairs early on, start some, re-education training with them, provided through, at the time it was an insurance provider. So the insurance provider and VAC kind of worked together to get the guy some re-education and retraining, post-military, to set you up for success to get into the military. So, as you get out of the military, to get into a trade. The unfortunate part is that one of the medications that most veterans get prescribed to help deal with their post-traumatic stress is marijuana. So how do you work as a trades guy if you can't pass a P test? Because you've been given marijuana to help cope and deal with your post-traumatic stress. So it's a very complex issue, and I was very fortunate to sit down with the Conservative Party and really help. We were one of the organizations that really helped craft. They had a really good veterans program. They took a lot of the ideas that we had as an organization and other veterans had suggested to them. And it's unfortunate that we didn't get a Conservative government in power, because some of the things we've talked about were going to change. Just the verbal abuse endured by veterans, this whole idea of MAID, the whole bureaucracy. Like, one of the things we talked about was, almost every veteran that I know who has put in their first application for a physical injury or post-traumatic stress, it gets automatically denied. And so that's a problem, because a lot of the medical doctors in this country don't want to help veterans anymore, because they're tired of having to do all this paperwork that some doctor in Veterans Affairs, or not even a doctor, someone in Veterans Affairs just arbitrarily says, no, I don't agree with that medical assessment. Go back, and you do an appeal, and then you do another appeal that goes usually to a judicial inquiry. And usually, if you can get to that judicial inquiry, if you can last, physically and mentally, if you can last to get to that judicial inquiry, it's usually a couple of retired RCMP guys, and they're usually really good. They're really sympathetic to the member, and they'll usually find in your favor. But a lot of guys, unfortunately, and gals, just can't get to that point, because it could take years. Like I went after Veterans Affairs came after me for the last almost 3 years, and I ended up having to go to the minister before the election. She ruled in my favor, and they were trying to claw back like $180,000. They said, in one breath, they said they'd overpaid me, and then they said they'd underpaid me. So
which one is it?
Yeah, which one is it? So,
well, Todd, the scary part for me is that you talk about some of these veterans. If you stick with it, if you can, my goodness, you've got PTSD, you've got this incredible illness that you're dealing with, and the people that need it the most are the ones that are not going to be able to stick through it. Like they're probably the ones that are a bit stronger, the ones that are able to get to the end and go through it. It's the ones that really need the help. They're the ones that are getting left behind because they just don't have the mental health to do it, right? It's
Yeah.
really, really scary.
And I was fortunate, like Patricia, I gave her many opportunities to say to leave me because of the stuff that I went through and put, say, my family through. And she stuck with me and beside me. And, I talk about there's five things that I needed to have to be successful. One was a strong marriage and my wife walking beside me, an extended family. So my parents and other family members really helped them to support me and understand. Not doing this, well, we don't agree with what you're doing, blah, blah, blah. No, they were very open and understanding and realizing that, this was an illness, but it's a treatable illness. Mental health is a treatable illness. I was spending time like working out and spending time outdoors, bow hunting, doing archery. And then, seeing a psychologist or a therapist. And that holistic approach that I took was, huge for my success and my ability to endure what I've gone through. And then looking back, it has now placed Patricia and I in a situation where we can, as the veteran hunters, we can walk alongside veterans and first responders through their journey and help them and hold their hand and provide whatever support that they need. One of the best parts about the veteran hunters is that when a guy or gal finishes a hunt, they have a phone that's full of phone numbers, and they know they can reach out to their brothers and sisters at any time.
Well, and one of the things I'm hearing here is that you've got that empathy having walked in their footsteps. And there's something to be said when somebody's walked in your footsteps, maybe not the same journey, but similar. You have the empathy, you have that understanding, you have the, whereas there's this detachment for someone that hasn't had that. So Todd, let's dive into the veteran hunters now and talk about the program, talk about the strengths. I want to learn more about what you guys are doing there, the great work that you're doing to support our veterans.
Yeah, and so I think the best part of the veteran hunters and the real unique thing about it is that we designed the veteran hunters to be an organization that is a volunteer organization, and it's peer led. Everything that we offer is you're, as a participant, you're a veteran or a first responder and you're connecting with us, you're going to connect with one of your peers right from the beginning. And we try and make it as simple and as easy for people to connect with us. So we have a website, www.veteranhunters.com. This year, because we're in our 6th season, we brought in a membership. It's not very expensive. We charge $60, but someone who pays that $60 membership, one we talked about earlier on about, having a life membership with Wild Sheep and being able to go to the government and stuff like that. Like we've spent a lot of time in the last 3 years, especially the Alberta government, and spent a lot of time talking with them. They love what we're doing as an organization here in Alberta, how we're helping also their first responders here in Alberta. Minister Lohan and I have had some great discussions. The government has, my hunting truck is a surplus Fish and Wildlife truck. And I love driving around and seeing the other Fish and Wildlife guys, and I high five them. They're kind of looking funny. And then they realize it's me because they're all like, who's driving around a Fish and Wildlife truck? And it's like, who's not one of us? And so we've got it deckled with veteran hunters on the side, and it's great. So the Alberta government's been really good. They provided us with a side-by-side to help guys, and they just approved us for a second Fish and Wildlife truck. So hopefully we'll have that in place this fall. So working on that politics side, it really helps to have some membership and also help us with fundraising. We're the only organization of our kind in the manner in which we take people outdoors, but also in how we do everything. So for how does a guy find out about us? So, whether it's through our YouTube or social media or word of mouth, people can apply to our hunts online. And then, I first connect with them by looking at their online application. And then we provide opportunities in 7 provinces across the country, and I've got volunteers in each of the provinces, and the opportunities are different for each province based on, the availability of my volunteers to take out a veteran or first responder. The animals that they really have an interest or passion in hunting and want to help that veteran or first responder harvest or fish, because now we've got fishing hosts here in Alberta and in New Brunswick. And then we tailor that outdoor activity to meet the physical and mental needs of the participant, so they get the most benefit of spending time with us. And every one of those hunts looks a little bit different. So I'm an elk guy. I'm a big elk guy, and that's the other thing too. We've been really fortunate with the Alberta government. 2 years ago now, we started a veteran-mentored antlerless elk hunt. So I'm fortunate that two of the largest landowners near where I am, who share basically a herd of 600 to 800 elk, give me pretty much carte blanche to take veterans and first responders out after elk. And the province really loved what we were doing and said, "Hey, how can we help you out?" And this was basically like a win-win-win situation. So, approached them and said, "Hey, the landowners, as you know, are having problems with these antlerless cow elk, eating all their hay, pushing their cattle around. I've got veterans that I need that I want to take out, and I've got the access." And then so they're like, "Great." So basically we vouch for veterans, and they get issued antlerless elk tags. And then in Alberta here, at least in the WMU that we hunt, you get 2 antlerless elk tags on 1 license. And so what we're able to do is that if we harvest a second elk, most people can't put 2 cow elk in their freezers. Especially ours are like huge. We're talking like 350 plus cow elk. So we donate them to a veterans food bank. And so it's everybody wins. Like it's just a great opportunity. And so come rifle season, so from 25 October till the end of January, and it might be the end of February this year, I've got a veteran with me every week. And the way I run my hunts is that I turn this house into a hunting lodge and run it very much. It's funny, I didn't know at the time, but subconsciously I was looking at how my buddy in South Africa runs, his outfitting business and the hospitality level, and that's what we do. I put veterans up in my home, and if we have multiple veterans, we've got an Airbnb nearby that we can host them in. And it's great. And then we break bread together, and I think that's one of the biggest things about is that opening your home, providing that hospitality, building that family group for a veteran or responder, and just connecting them, on that emotional level as well, right? That they see like what we've gone through, and I really enjoy it. I enjoy serving my soldiers again. And I think that's been really healing for me, is to be able to, because in my mind, my military career was cut short. I didn't get to serve my soldiers for as long as I wanted to. And now I get an opportunity to serve them again, and and help these ranchers. And we'll be driving around chasing these elk, and I have I'll have a fencing bag in my truck. So if we see down fences, well, elk are hard on cattle fences, so we'll just bang some nails, and and the ranchers appreciate that. And it's just about building family. And my wife's Italian ancestry, so she loves to be able to cook for lots of guys and eat pasta, and so it's great. So
how many guys do you end up having there at one time at your place, Todd?
let me see, the most I had last year, I said, was like three at one time. And when we try and do is a 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1 ratio. So when I have higher participant levels, I've got fortunate. We were able to, my wife and I, Patricia, we were able to mentor a lady, Jen, over the last couple of years, a veteran, and she has actually been the one of the few veterans that's been able to harvest 2 cow elk on those licenses the last couple of years. And she took on this year as a role as the veteran huntress, and now she leads all of our ladies specific programs. So we call it Ladies Go Hunting and Fishing, and it's a program specifically designed for ladies. And she was recently out in BC and did a coastal black bear hunt. And we've opened that program up to basically the ladies that can participate in that program don't necessarily have to be a veteran or a responder, but they could be the spouse of a veteran or responder. Because my wife, even though she didn't get necessarily treatment for my post-traumatic stress, she went through a lot as part of that journey. And we recognize that as an organization, that as the spouse needs an opportunity to connect with other spouses or other ladies who have, post-traumatic stress as well. And so it's great. And it's super exciting to be able to bring that opportunity this year as well to the organization. And most of those hunts that she's offering, one in BC, the rest of them will be offered here in Alberta. And so Jen comes out and will help me as another veteran. We're always looking for more volunteers. Unfortunately, every volunteer that we onboard costs us about $500, but that's just the cost of doing business on onboarding them. And then, fundraising, just to segue to that, fundraising is really hard, challenging as an organization of our kind in this country. I talked to my American brothers, and they're like, man, you could, just with your own personal story, you could probably make like $300,000 at a hunting dinner down here. And we struggled just to raise $25,000 for the year. But we've had some really great supporters and sponsors from the beginning. Vortex Canada has been great with us. They provide a ton of swag and discounts for the participants in our program. So they've been really good. Neil and the guys there have walked with us since the beginning of our journey. And then Bass Pro Cabela's with their outdoor fund. I deal directly with the folks in Missouri, and they have been really, really supportive, and actually in some cases, like, astonished because of the numbers that we put up. Like, we'll put on average about 70 people through our program a year, and they're just like, how do you put that many people, veterans and responders outdoors in a season? I mean, outfitters would love to have those kind of numbers. And I'm like, I have some really good volunteers. I take a lot of people outdoors, and we have no shortage of applicants. Last year we had 105 applicants, and unfortunately, we could only take like 70 just because we don't have the volunteers and the financial support to do more.
Few things I want to touch on, and I want to touch on the support that you need in a bit. But before we go there, talk a little bit about what is it with the outdoors and hunting that is that healing elixir for so many veterans. Might be over complicating it. We know we all feel better when we're outside, and but maybe just touch on sort of your personal journey, or maybe some of the experiences you've had in supporting veterans where you've really seen, how being outdoors and that connection to the outdoors and then hunting has been that healing for so many people.
Yeah, no, that's great. And thanks for asking me, because that's a really important part of what makes us different. When I was going through my post-traumatic stress treatment for the kind of that 6 years, I got back into hunting, but I got into bow hunting. And I hadn't bow hunted before. And a lot of veterans say they'll hunt as a kid, but we don't get time to hunt while we're serving. So it's something that we relearn and retool for when we get out of the military. And one of the things I was able to do, and I live not far from WMU 410 here in Alberta, and it's exclusively archery, and it's great. And I was an infantry officer by trade, so I'm pointing into the spear, and I've been really fortunate to lead some of Canada's absolutely best soldiers on operations overseas and do some really, really cool stuff. And then when your service is cut short, and you're like, man, like, the government spent millions of dollars training me to do something I really like, and which basically, I'm an infantry officer by training. So my job was to, kill the enemies of our nation. and use all the assets at my disposal with, inflicting maximum casualties on the enemy with minimal to my men. And now I've got a bow, I'm in 410, and I'm now trying to put stocks on elk and mule deer and stuff like that. And I started finding that, wow, like I'm using, for spot and stock archery, I'm using all of the skills. Like I'm using my listening, I'm using my nose, my sight. I got to be patient. And there are times where, you're choosing not to move, because you might get seen, or the wind shifts, or there are times, when the winds shift, you got to be patient and just say, hey, I'm not moving because they're going to smell us. And then you find that you're actually hunting an animal that is far smarter and superior in every aspect than a human is. Like an elk will not light up a cigarette, and give its like that scent away. And they'll continue. If you're standing still and you're doing a calling sequence and you hear him moving and he's working the wind. I've chased warthog in South Africa. I haven't harvested one yet because I do it spot stock, but I've had 4 awesome opportunities, and I've watched those warthogs just work the wind, raise their tail up, and then just work the wind all the way around trying to get my scent. And then you start realizing that, man, this is super gratifying. Like I'm using all the skills that I learned in the military to close with on a human, and now I'm using this on an animal that I can take home and feed my family. So there's a whole bunch of duality there. There's like, one, I'm feeling more of a man because, a lot of guys kind of wonder, who am I now? My identity now that I can't be in the military. And it should be just being a husband and a father is enough, but in some cases we have to have something else, right? And so now that I have found purpose and meaning again, that I can still use my soldier skills, but now I'm using my soldier skills as a father and a husband to feed my family, and bring that home. And so we'll teach veterans like everything from, we'll have guys show up who just passed their hunter ed, and we'll teach them everything that they want to learn, from how to hunt, in my case, how to hunt elk, to how to dress them out. And if you want to break it down at your home, we'll show you how to do that, because I do all my own butchering as well. And so now it's like multi levels of satisfaction and gratification, because you can do everything that you once did before, and now you have found meaning and purpose again in a different form that brings you the same level of satisfaction you did when you were serving. And that's really one of the biggest key differences in what we do, is that because we're peers and we've all been through this journey, and we all know exactly, the guy who's sitting next to me, we kind of chuckle about this, and I've been on backcountry elk hunts or sheep hunts and whatever, and guys wake up in the morning, and a lot of us have the same ailments. There's usually 5 conditions that come with being post-traumatic stress. So irritable bowel is one of them. And sort of be graphic about this, but that's one of the beauties of our program, is that, like, if I have to pull over the pickup truck, odds are the 2 guys in the truck with me have to go as well. And so there's no, or people learn, to wait for me. We're heading out in the morning, we're having our coffee and stuff, and but there's that comfort level that a guy has hunting with us, that he doesn't say having hunting with a civilian buddy or going with an outfitter, because he doesn't feel like he can be that, upfront or graphic or whatever. And basically we take all of that stigma away and provide the guy or gal with this absolute, comfortable environment to be in. And we always say, like, it's no stress. It's all good. Like, if we don't get to the ranch right at the break of dawn, that's not a problem. It's all on their time, and all of us have a level of anxiety as well. And some guys we have found that they thought harvesting an elk was everything they needed, and it turned out it wasn't. I remember this one opportunity And it's funny, I've helped harvest 20 elk. I haven't harvested my own yet. Um, anyhow, sometimes it's easier to help other people than to help yourself, right? And I remember this one time and this elk herd like of 600 has given me and Patricia some awesome opportunities. So if I never harvest an elk, it doesn't matter because I've literally walked with this herd, um, been in close contact with these elk, and really, it's going to sound weird, like it's like they recognize me and have allowed me to have this relationship with them as a species and help others. And I've been in the herd behind bales, and we're bugling, and there's three bulls walking around, and they each think that I'm them, and trying to get this veteran to knock an arrow and stuff, and he's just. And then I realized, wait a minute, this is all the therapy he needed. Hearing the cows chirping, seeing these bulls walking around, bugling, and everything, and then was like, okay, you know what? Just kind of for us as an organization to take a step back and say, yeah, we're there to help them harvest, but if the harvest isn't the healing that they need, it's okay. And that's one of the things we look at, with our volunteers is that, just understand that, you may want to harvest, but the guy you're with, thinks he wants to harvest, but really that the therapy was spending time with you, spending time in nature and spending time encountering with those animals. And that may be all of the therapy that they need. And maybe next year, if they participate with us, they're at a point where they're like, yeah, you know what? I want to bring home the bacon and get that arrow or bullet in that elk, and way to go. And so, yeah.
One thing I'm hearing that's super cool about your program is that it's a community-based program. It's not, you mentioned this early on off air, you've alluded to it a few times here, is that you're not just sending someone out with an outfitter, go have a hunt and then go home and see you later. Like, oh yeah, we've fixed, we've helped you with your problem. No, this is a peer-to-peer program so there's a sense of community. There's a sense of looking forward to the next connection. And in the military, as you know, it's all about that community, right? Like there's a fraternity of people. You're out there with your squadron
Yes.
or with your crew doing your thing. And that's like, it's built on that camaraderie and that teamwork. And you get kicked out, and then all of a sudden you've got this PTSD or you're struggling with life, and then you don't even have a support system. You've lost your brothers, you've lost your sisters, you've got nobody. So you guys are kind of replacing what they've lost in the military and that community that they've relied on for so many years that they've lost. So obviously a very successful program, Todd. Super, super cool. I know we don't have, I could talk to you all day, man. There's so much.
Oh,
here.
I know. I like it. This is awesome. I really, like this opportunity and just being able to share, what we're doing, and just to add to what you were talking about there. So I've been fortunate. So my peer group are now the general officers in the military, and it's interesting. I seem to have more influence outside the military now than I did when I was serving. And but we've been fortunate to get into the transition centers across the country so that veterans can find out about the veteran hunters. We're in so every veteran now that as they're transitioning into civilian world life gets put in front of a binder, and they can look through all these different organizations, and ours is one of them in there. And we try to, one of the things we try to have volunteers in proximity to some of the larger bases across the country. And that helps us connect with guys as they're coming out, or gals as they're coming out. So we can say, hey, when you're ready, we're here to help you get outdoors and offer, these are the opportunities that we offer. And one of the programs that we started offering this year, besides ladies, go hunting and fishing, is families go outdoors. One of the things we realized, is that we need to create opportunities for veterans, military, and first responders to reconnect as a family through a variety of outdoor programs. So, and then we also introduce their children to hunting, fishing, and shooting sports. Like my children wouldn't have harvested any of these animals if I didn't spend time sharing my passion for the outdoors with them. And I can see over there the mule deer tree. I think mine's the tiny one down at the bottom, and the other ones are like, my daughter and sons. And then, you know what? I get more passion and enjoyment watching my kids harvest than I do for myself. And so we just said, hey, let's start offering opportunities for families to go outdoors. So we did some, my guys in New Brunswick, they did an ice fishing day, and we had 17 people came out to do ice fishing with us. And now we're offering here in Alberta in the end of July, we're offering a family range day and barbecue. And there's a company that's agreed to sponsor the barbecue part. And we're doing the range on one of my volunteers, her family farm. And it's a great opportunity for families to come out for a day to do some fun target shooting. Guys get their rifles zeroed for, getting ready for the fall. We're going to do some skeet shooting and just have a family and go outdoors.
That's awesome. So let's talk about some of the upcoming stuff. So we know we got the golf tournament, some of the other stuff, and then so I guess there's two parts. Any veterans that are listening or first responders, how do they get involved, or how can they reach out and apply? And then also, what can are the broader public beyond the veterans or first responders? What can we do to support this great program, Todd?
Yeah, great. So if you have any interest in the veteran hunters, please go to our website, www.theveteranhunters.com. There's a big splash bullet right at the front page with a hyperlink to our golf tournament on August 15th. This golf tournament is really key. We started doing this last year as kind of being our mid-year fundraiser. The golf tournament has some serious potential to be a really good fundraiser for us. As an organization, it's my wife and I, and she's a full-time teacher. So really it's the two of us managing this organization. She makes all of our apparel. Like we do it on a shoestring. So what we try and raise money to help offset the costs that my volunteers incur, and also the onboarding. The other thing too is that, for example, we need, for every one of my volunteers who needs a tree stand, we need two-person tree stands. We will not put a veteran or first responder in the field by themselves. So one of the things is, raising money to buy tree stands to put our guys up in the field, or blinds or that kind of stuff to have for equipment in the field, so that we can continue to offer a peer-to-peer experience in the field. So yeah, if you want to find out more about what opportunities we're providing the veteran hunters, if you scroll down our main page there, you go to the events calendar, it'll take you to the kind of external calendar, show you what's currently being offered across the country. We'll be updating it with our fall hunts here probably in the next couple of weeks. And if you want to become a member, you buy a membership for $60. And then that gives you the opportunity for a veteran or first responder to actually apply for the opportunities on the application page. If someone wants to support the organization right now, the best way to do it is to look at that golf tournament website. We're looking for a number of golf teams, sponsors. You do not need to be a veteran or a first responder to play in this tournament. Actually, we're looking for basically corporate Canada, or looking for Canada to support our organization by sponsoring a team or fielding a team, being a sponsor for the event. Or if you have a passion, you're not able to play, or you have just a passion to help veterans and first responders, there's an opportunity for you to actually go and sponsor a veteran or a first responder to come play in our tournament. So there's a variety of different ways. And then 1 month prior to the tournament, we'll be opening up an online auction that'll probably run for about a month prior, and we've got a number of donated gifts, and we might actually have an Africa hunt that we might be able to put up there as well. Just kind of wet the whistle for people who may be interested in going to a hunt in Africa. So.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I'm a member. I signed up this morning, and great organization, Todd. Hats off to you and Patricia, your wife, and the entire Veteran Hunters team. You guys are doing a great work for obviously the veteran community, the first responder community, and something that I think we don't do enough of. And obviously, there's a serious deficiency. Our government again is not looking after our veterans like they should. So it's organizations like you that are really picking up the slack. And obviously, you guys are going to be successful. I know it's really challenging as a not-for-profit. To get that support. So, yeah, great website. I love what you're doing. Love the podcast, everything. So, appreciate all you do, Todd. I guess in closing, anything else that we missed here? Anything you want to touch on, or any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Just one thing, just to add to, we have a YouTube channel. Just go online to YouTube and search up the Veteran Hunters, and you can have a look at some of the hunts. We were fortunate. For 2 seasons, we aired on Sportsman's Channel Canada. They liked what we were doing and said, "Hey, if you can put a show up, we'll air it for free." And what we've done, and that would allow us, actually, we connected with a lot of wives, a lot of spouses would connect with us after seeing that show with their husband. It just gives you an idea of the opportunities that we do. But actually, you see me and veterans in the field, and some of these veterans share their stories, share their personal stories about the healing that they are finding by connecting with us, the Veteran Hunters, and they'll talk about that urgent biophilia from a practical standpoint. So if you want to see what we're doing practically, check out our YouTube channel.
I will definitely. I'll include that in the show notes, and a few of these other things that we talked about, the golf tournament and a few other things, membership. So we'll have that in there. One last thing I was just going to reflect on is my MP is Aaron Gunn, and I think probably Aaron Gunn's going to be an advocate for veterans as well. He's retired military, and I'm hoping that as part of that conservative caucus that he'll be doing his job there and really looking after elevating this issue and in federally as well. So yeah. Awesome work, Todd. Thank you so much, and look forward to. We got to have you back on. There's so much we just touched the surface on, but appreciate all you do.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, and yeah, would love to come back on and talk about kind of how the year goes. So
awesome. Thank you so much. We'll chat soon.
Thanks.